Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've all had a good lunch and also some time to mooch about the exhibition a little bit. My name is Sharon, and I'll be your MC for this afternoon's program. So we've got loads to get through, so we want to get started pretty quickly. But before that, let me tell you a little anecdote. A few years ago, my daughter walks up to the television in the living room and she tries to zoom in on the cartoon character on the screen. And I'm sure, you've got nephews, nieces, sons, daughters, grandchildren or whatever it is that have done that before. We all laughed, but I must say, if you think about it, that's the kind of world that our children are growing up in. But that's not necessarily the type of world that everybody is comfortable being in. So how do we ensure that the workforce does not get left behind in a rapidly digitalizing world? So to tell us more about that, I'd like to invite our first speaker for today, Mr. Ng Tian Chong, Managing Director of Greater Asia at HP, to tell us more. Mr. Ng?
Thank you. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to see all of you here, and what a wonderful event. It's really great to be able to see the ecosystem come together. And it's wonderful to see many colleagues and industry players in this world of advanced manufacturing. So 2022 has been a really turbulent year. And looking forward, many economists are predicting what else? A slowdown, potential slowdown in the with global economic headwinds. And over the past few weeks, and perhaps even months, almost daily when we look at the news, what do we see? All too familiar headlines of slowing economy, inflation, weakening currency, increased component operating costs, geopolitical challenges, and climate incidents, right? But this, in fact, makes it more important, more critical why we're all here today. Because this topic of advanced manufacturing enables all of us to accelerate our ability to address many of these headwinds. According to PwC's Consumer Intelligence Survey on Fourth Industrial Revolution, 4IR report, they spoke to about 1,800 senior executives recently. And 63% of the executives agreed that 4IR provides protection against economic downturn. Business leaders that they spoke to said they expect 4IR technology to increase productivity, reduce labor costs, and protect, or should I say even widen, the bottom line margins to offset diminished demand and revenue that they foresee. 4IR technology also positions businesses to increase the value of their offerings, enhance the ability to pivot their operations, and more importantly, enable companies to do more with less. Now, I'll be frank, we all know that transformation isn't that easy. It takes a great deal of investment, not just financially, but technologically as well. And in HP's experience, it's also about stakeholder management and human capital management. And more importantly, the lessons that we learn in HP is that transformation requires mindset change. And mindset change is something that money can't buy. It is really a long journey. So I want to first start by talking a little bit about HP's journey. Now, we were the second MNC to set up shop in Singapore, I believe after Texas Instrument in 1970. HP started our operations in Singapore in a flatted factory in an industrial zone in what we call Red Hill area of HP. And we started with just a handful of employees. And this old factory of ours started to make electronic components and some of the famous engineering calculators that some of you over the years may have used, including the 38E at that site. Now, over the years, HP has grown tremendously in Singapore. We've been here for some 52 years or more, and we've grown to over 4,000 employees spread across many sites in Singapore. And recently, we consolidated our operations to around Depot Road, where we have an old factory. I think it's the photo that you see over there. Many of you who live in Singapore on Depot Road, a very nice tree-lined street. You'll see the HP old factory has been there for a long time. And we also have built a new campus, an L-shaped, beautiful campus, a state-of-the-art campus some 5 years ago. And it's kind of located next to the Interlace condominium, right, on that side of Depot Road Street. And the story is that inside the new campus, we actually built our new printhead manufacturing line. And that factory supports manufacturing of HP's printhead for inkjet products globally. So at HP, we made the decision some 5 years ago to go all in on advanced manufacturing with this printhead manufacturing line in Singapore. Why is that? Because we realized that if we did not, HP would get left behind, especially in this manufacturing space where technology is advancing aggressively. And so for us, investing upfront is to buy us protection against the future. And that was the mindset that our management team and many of my colleagues took when we evaluated to deploy 4IR technology. And for us, when we deployed 4IR technology in this printhead manufacturing line, it was specifically around 5 areas: robotics and automation. Second, predictive analytics. Third, machine learning. Fourth, additive manufacturing or 3D printing, which HP also, we have our own line of products for 3D printer. And by the way, there's a little booth just outside the exit where we've brought some samples of what we do in 3D printing, including samples of our latest metal jet 3D printing that we just launched. So if you're curious what 3D printing in stainless steel now could look like, please stop by the booth. You could take a look, but we do have it there too. And then the fifth area when we set up this smart factory was around industrial Internet of Things. So for example, for us, advanced robotics or the use of collaborative robots allow us to take on very delicate but highly repetitive tasks as part of the manufacturing process. And we managed to improve quality and efficiency of our output. And 3D printing or additive manufacturing allow us to manufacture parts that are used on the line. And in fact, we also brought some samples of the machine parts that we are 3D printing ourselves in the little booth outside to also show you what we've done. When we do that, what happens? It allows us to bring manufacturing closer to home. It, more importantly, allows us to print on demand and cut down on storage and inventory carrying costs. And finally, it also means no logistic, no transportation costs for many of these parts. And because of the scale of HP's business, it also means more efficiency for us and, more importantly, sustainability. Now, as we started deploying the line, our technicians and engineers were further able to optimize it. And we started using AIVs, or autonomous intelligent vehicles, to move parts around our factory so that we could reduce the manual labor. And our operators subsequently did not need to lift and shift all the heavyweight products and inventory, which also means we made our workplace much safer. And we also learned that by installing dash cams in our smart factory, our employees could investigate incidences more effectively. And by adding more vision engines and machine learning, we were able to detect defects. And we did not need our operators to peer hours into a microscope all day looking for defects. And then I'm pleased to say that IIoT also allows us to bring all this together so that we can observe the entire process, spot errors, assess downtime, and essentially optimize our productivity through a command center that we built. And if any of you get a chance to visit, you will see how we have orchestrated all this in a command center at the factory. And it is really very impressive what we've done over the years. So all this automation gave us an opportunity to reskill. Our operators at our factory can be now trained as technicians, which in turn frees up the engineers' time to research on new areas or data and better value-add data analytics, or even pursue their careers in other parts of HP. So this, in short, what we've done open up opportunities to reskill our existing employees to higher value-add work so that we can automate the more repetitive tasks and add greater value. So for us at HP, we started this journey at advanced manufacturing, designing and building our lines from scratch, which meant that we did not have to deal with any legacy systems when we first started. And we could be very clear about the outcomes that we wanted. And we were able to plan for the resources that we needed. Now, along with our advanced manufacturing, we also built the Smart Manufacturing Applications and Research Center, which is also partly EDB funded when we started. This is really important because this is now where we have some of our engineers and teams continually do research in these areas of robotics, AI, big data, for example, that I mentioned earlier. We actually researched that in our Smart Lab. This Smart Manufacturing Application Research Center is located right next to our manufacturing line. And what happens is when we research and we are successful, we immediately deploy the success onto the shop floor. And that's how we've been able to continually improve our smart factory over the last 5 years. And I'm really pleased to say that in January 2020, HP Singapore was recognized by the World Economic Forum as part of its global lighthouse network, which means that now we are seen as a leader in applying fourth industrial revolution technology to achieve profitable growth without increasing environmental footprint. As a result of our effort, advanced manufacturing in Singapore has improved productivity and quality by over 70% and helped us decrease manufacturing costs by more than 20%. So yes, it is an investment, but the gains that we have makes it all worth it. Now let me switch gears a little bit and talk about the whole transformation and the index. For us, transforming to advanced manufacturing is a challenge, but it is a challenge that is made easier every day, which I'm sure many of you will find as well as you interact, mingle, and speak to many of the conference attendees. You'll see that there are many advances in technology, and there are progress made by those who have gone through it and sharing their experience, like I am now, but there are many in the crowd that have done it as well. And so, from HP perspective, here's what we learned along the way. The first thing is that you have to start strong. You have to have extremely specific, clear goals from the outset. Did we want to achieve 10% added efficiency or 20%? Where and how are we going to get there? And for those who are mulling over the same questions, I would like to point you to the Global Smart Industry Readiness Index, SHIRI. I know that many of you, as you wander around the halls, you would have seen this SHIRI index displayed in different booths. You realize that this index is really very useful. And it's built by the World Economic Forum and the Singapore Economic Development Board. SHIRI provides a helpful framework to understand what is required. So when HP started our journey, it was prior to SHIRI. So we had to learn the hard way. But however, we worked with EDB as one of the pilot companies to actually employ SHIRI for use in the industry as one of the pilot companies, right? So we started that to drive advanced manufacturing adoption. The second thing I'll say is that we need to determine the technology and implementation roadmap. This involves assessing the capabilities of people and what skills that they require. Advanced manufacturing certainly isn't just about technology. It is about people. And you have to realize, when I said earlier, it's an investment in human capital and people. So upskilling our people and driving mindset change was equally important to successful transformation. So that's the other piece. And upskilling and mindset and change of the workforce is really important. Why is that? It is because this will drive the motivation and give our teams ownership of the transformation. And this is what we found out at HP, that when there's a mindset change, then the people who are involved have the belief to execute the plan. And I think it's important because when you have the upskilling and the training, it also brings continuity. And for us, having the right culture is extremely important to HP, where there's a lot of existing knowledge that we could tap into and combine that with the institutional knowledge of the workforce and then also fresh thinking of new people that we hire over time. So for this portion, for SMEs in the audience especially, who might not have immediate resources for upfront investment, my advice is this. Advanced manufacturing can be deployed in phases. It doesn't have to be taken in one bite. You have to identify areas where efficiencies can be gained through technology and then continuously improve. Indeed, 4IR technologies, particularly those supporting automation and AI and IoT, have become much more advanced and much easier to deploy. So, I'm going to round things up by sharing that advanced manufacturing succeeds when there's a strong ecosystem. Public-private partnership is really critical to this. And the Singapore government has been playing a very key role to support programs and also thought leadership. And this is why HP has been in Singapore for more than half a decade, is because over the time, we've seen consistent policy, forward-thinking policy that helps offset the return on investment curve. And so this ecosystem is really important. And it's also important because HP currently works across institutions, universities, and government to build the best practices. And most recently, we were appointed in August as a Skills Future Queen Bee, and we are building a series of courses in sustainable manufacturing with SIM, Singapore Institute of Management, to bring courses to others in the ecosystem. This is something we're really proud of at HP, and I do hope that many of you in the audience, if you're keen to learn more about sustainable manufacturing, please talk to me. And I see some of my colleagues in the audience who look after the program, and we're offering more than 14 courses across sustainable manufacturing. We're more than happy to share our knowledge and how you could participate. Now, in addition, we work with our contract manufacturers to provide them with tool sets, assistance, know-how, and deploy advanced manufacturing in incremental steps with them. So in closing, I'll say this: there are challenges in the journey towards advanced manufacturing. And at a time when we are facing economic headwinds, it can be really difficult to make the investments and to drive change. However, the investments provide a cover, a form of insurance against these uncertain times. Advanced manufacturing builds business resiliency, achieves greater productivity, and more importantly, it's a far more sustainable form of manufacturing. And at HP, we've seen a lot of that through the use of automation and analytics. I could go on and share many of the stories that we have, how we've used, for example, automated LED lights in our factory, and by retrofitting and optimizing our machinery, we have reduced our CO2 emissions. We've also deployed advanced analytics and machine learning, and through real-time detection, etc., we've improved our product quality yields and result in less discarded material through our manufacturing process. And all this has turned into energy savings and, more importantly, longer-lasting products for us. I want to leave you with this. I think that, first of all, there's a pressing need to start the transformation journey. And I do hope that over the course of these 3 days, many of you will stand to gain knowledge from this conference, learn from the journey of others who have made this transformation journey. And I hope that you have predictive, very, very productive discussions with each other and learn from industry peers to build from their experiences. But the basics are this, and I'll close by this closing comment that I want to leave you with. For industry transformation, you got to plan your work, work your plan, and your plan will work. All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much and have a great conference.
Thank you, Mr. Ng. And thank you for sharing such nice stories of the HP journey. Now, another company that is also constantly at the forefront of new technology is Microsoft. So our next speaker is going to paint us an interesting picture of how technology is being harnessed in manufacturing, building virtual environments, digital twins of the real world. Well, I'll let him tell you all about it. So please welcome Mr. Richard Koh, Chief Technology Officer and Customer Success Lead of Microsoft Singapore.
All right, good afternoon. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna have a screen here. So I guess I gotta watch all the feedback. How's everybody doing? This is kind of my first in person. I'm feeling a little bit nervous actually seeing human beings like not on the screen for the first time. Tian Chong, you showed a very interesting slide. So I'm gonna start dating myself because that HP building was my first office that I worked in when I graduated. So I worked in the manufacturing area as my first job with manufacturing systems and all. So, but just a little bit myself. Yes, I started out with Hewlett Packard in the printers, components, IC chips, manufacturing, part of that, doing systems. And then shortly, a couple of years after that, I went over to Silicon Valley because I was a software engineer as well. So this is where software was happening. So with HP in Palo Alto, Cupertino. And then lo and behold, in about 2006, Microsoft came calling. So I moved up to Seattle and the Seattle area and in Redmond and joined Microsoft. So my little claim to fame is I was part of the founding team that built this little product that we call Office 365. So very fortunate to be there. But that's a little bit about me. I want to just share a little bit about how we're thinking about the metaverse and how does it relates to manufacturing. I think when you look at this picture, tens and thousands of years ago, mankind have used tools or materials to be able to put their imagination on some form of a canvas. And in this case, this was the canvas itself were caves, the rocks itself. Now, and as we fast forward to the world today, when we think about designs in the manufacturing world, you see drawings like this, right? And I'm sure many of you who are in this space are very familiar with that. But there's something that's always a little bit missing. I think the amount of dimensionality as well as the interactivity is not quite there. So at Microsoft, we're a tools and platforms company. And I think, since the founding of the company back in 1975, when, we were just a startup with Bill and Paul back in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the key thing was how do we think about building the tools to enable engineers, to be able to enable developers to be able to achieve more. So as you go through this conference and you think about the buzzword around digital transformation, I think the last 2 years has really accelerated the efforts that you have seen in your organizations, in your home, the way how you have done your daily lives, as well as how you collaborate with colleagues all around the world itself. Now, commuting to actually a meeting feels like a chore. You would rather take a meeting, let's say, over Microsoft Teams, or perhaps through a conference call or some collaboration tool. Now, when you think about that acceleration itself, it definitely touches into every aspect of our industries that we live in today. And from our perspective, at Microsoft, when we think about what we do, is really to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. This is our mission. This is our being. This is why we exist. And when you think about what we do as a platform, as we transform the company over the last 10 years or so, right, you have seen us move into the cloud itself. And we have created probably the largest cloud platform on the planet itself. I was fortunate to be part of the founding team of one of them, which is Microsoft 365, and that's under our modern work cloud itself. But as you look across all of that foundation, this lays the foundation for many of our industry relevant clouds that we are pushing out today. And here on the show floor, you will be able to see some of the capabilities that we've brought about for Microsoft Cloud in manufacturing itself, With 65 Azure regions around the world, we are the largest cloud provider on the planet, bar none. And this is the most trusted and comprehensive cloud on the planet. Now, as you fast forward and think about the technology associated with that, we believe that we're due for a new computing paradigm as we move from the personal computer all the way to the web, the mobile. What is this next generation computing fabric going to look like for everyone? And it should not exist in a vacuum. What it means is that it needs to really interact and take into consideration the other societal and cultural trends that we see around the world in different parts of the world as well. Whether is it in hybrid work, whether is it in, interesting things like virtual real estate, for example, remote learning, immersive gaming. All of that aspect is going to have an influence on this new next generation of computing fabric and experiences that I want to talk about. And we believe that is going to be that metaverse. Now, there are many, many different definitions, the way people think about what the metaverse is going to look like. But in many ways, it's really bringing about that immersive experiences that you have and closing the gap between distances and people across the globe for you to have that kind of interactivity, just like you're having here in this conference floor itself. Now, we believe that the set of technologies, and as a tools and platform company, we believe that this is what needs to come together to support. Whether is it around people, places, things, and processes itself, I think when we think about the amount of dimensionality and interactivity that we can bring to the experiences, it will be just amazing what our kids will experience when they think about manufacturing, when they think about experiencing collaboration with colleagues all across the other part of the world itself. Now, I'm just going to touch on a little bit on what it means when you bring these technologies into the being itself. Whether is it around simulations, whether is it around prediction. Tian Zhong from HE talk about IoT, industrial IoT. A lot of that signals all coming at fast speeds. You need digital platforms to be able to process them, learn them on the fly, be able to adjust machines, perhaps even on the fly as well, as you think about what the signals are telling you. And some of these can be managed by machine learning models that, frankly, are getting more and more powerful every day. If you think about what Microsoft has done, for example, in the partnership with OpenAI, and if you think about how many parameters that is running from the machine learning models, that's about 175 million parameters. Just think about that in your head, and you can imagine the sheer size of data sets as well as the kind of intelligence that will bring to some of these capabilities itself, right? So digital twins, AI and ML is just going to be part and parcel of a life. Just like, I think, looking at a crowd here, I think it looks like half of us did not grow up with the internet when we were born, and half of us probably grew, when we were born, the internet was already here. Yeah? All right, you are nodding, so you are agreeing with me. But just imagine for our children, they will be growing up where artificial intelligence will just be part and parcel of their life. They will be manipulating tools, platforms, media, anything like that, and expecting a co-pilot in the form of an AI model that will help them to navigate this new brave, this brave new world itself. So, as we think about how we bring this immersive experience, not only just immerse, that kind of holographic type of experiences itself, in behind the scenes, the kind of intelligence and the kind of learning that can take place as well. Now, what we do here at Microsoft is with Dynamics 365 Remote Assist, you can call in a colleague from any parts of the world and donning on the Microsoft HoloLens itself and be able to interact and also receive assistance, just like the person is almost next to you, right? Same thing with guides and things like that. Earlier on this year, I did a filming together with the National University Health Services around how they're using mixed reality and the HoloLens to help doctors and nurses learn about procedures as well, right? So go up to YouTube, you can find that video. Now, I'm just gonna quickly roll a video. I apologize in advance that we don't have the closed caption, something to do with the networks over here, but this gives you a view of what we did together with Kawasaki Industries around the industrial metaverse itself, right? So I will try and narrate through what the person is talking about, but what we're trying to do here is that really creating that digital twin of the robots that is operating at high speeds, at processing a lot of data on the shop floor itself, and then bringing that experience and that data to the workers that are actually monitoring it. So just think about that. For someone like her, she would be actually working with a robot much more than before, than actually doing the actual manufacturing itself. I still remember the days when I was at HP and walking the shop floor itself and seeing the workers actually assembling the printers and PCs and all of that. And now it's industrial robots that the shop floor, workers are actually manipulating, and having a digital twin of that, bringing the signals in, bringing the data in, and being able to make real-time decisions based on the data that you're seeing itself. And then with the metaverse, you can bring in colleagues from another parts of the world, or maybe just in the next building, to be able to troubleshoot, to be able to look at data and help you make certain decisions on the fly. Now, I'm just gonna go forward a little bit more and say, look, it's not just the Microsoft HoloLens when we talk about the holographic immersive experiences itself. When we think about your experiences of whatever, let's say that's happening on the data, on the shop floor and things like that, it should come with an array of devices, whether you're looking at a touchpad, a PC, or anything like that, right? This is how we think about bringing back experiences into various different form factors. Last but not least, I just want to share a little bit. When we think about the metaverse and the industrial metaverse stack, this is the Microsoft stack. Whether it's Azure Digital Twins all the way to Maps, Synapse Analytics, for you to process the data itself. Yes, go ahead and take the photos. To the Microsoft HoloLens Power Platform to build the application. For us, these are tooling that we want to put into the engineers' hands to be able to create a kind of processes, to be able to create a kind of experiences, to be able to create a kind of dashboards, for example, for your colleagues, for your customers. Imagine that your customers are actually using your product and feeding back real-time telemetry to you so that you have predictability in terms of sending your service crew, for example, to, let's say, the different sites that your machines are deployed to. This is the new age of digital acceleration that we're all talking about. Now, I want to kind of leave you with this. When we think about the evolution here, this is just right at the very beginning. We're able today to be able to bring in the mixed reality experiences, as well as the digital twinning of machines, of buildings, of whatever the environment that you can think about. If you can bring in some digital data, you will be able to create that kind of experiences itself. But as we evolve and you look at the kind of three-dimensional data as well as the immersive experience, how do we then bring all of that in as if that it's very second nature itself in the room itself, and then being able to we call it holoportation. I think that was the word that we use. But bringing, let's say, a bunch of people into the same kind of experience or a room or a facility, so that everybody is looking at the same exact physical environment itself. This is our opportunity here to bring in the bits from the digital world and the atoms of the physical world and fuse them together to create an experience that you will just be blown away. So with that, I want to leave you with this video to give you a sense of where we think the future will be.
Connection is a spark that gives our lives meaning. It drives us to seek out others who feel the same way.
Okay, why don't you input the data and we'll take a look together. Hey, Mari, what you got for me?
To find those who share our views, yet offer different perspectives.
So this net. Look over here.
Challenge us with new ways of seeing.
But I think we should
Deepen our understanding. And enrich our lives.
最后一笔的时候，往前
Great things happen when we commit to something bigger than ourselves.
Take a closer look at it.
place this here. Let's see how we go from there, okay?
This sense of collaboration and the feelings of connection it brings excites us.
Hey, just in time. I'm gonna move it slightly, okay?
It's yours, take it.
We have two planes right now on the same trajectory.
As we put people first, technology fades into the background and feels like anything but.
Aisha, what do you think?
I think if we had 330, maintaining 2800, we'll be clear for approach.
Excellent.
This changes the way we see the world, and in turn, changes the world we see.
These numbers are looking great, actually.
There's promise in the possibilities, and what we see and create next will stretch the imagination.
Good morning, Sarah.
Morning.
Slowly coming towards the thumb.
A world without boundaries.
Good job. A lot better than yesterday.
Yeah.
Excellent. Slowly bring
A world where technology enhances, not limits, humanity. With people front, center, and in the spotlight. The future is here. And here can be anywhere. Introducing Microsoft Mesh.
All right. So hopefully that gets you inspired. Definitely start your journey today. I've got great colleagues that's out there on the show floor, really sharing with you some of these capabilities that were brought to this conference itself. So I really hope that you make the connections as well as plan your industrial metaverse journey. You have been a great crowd. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Now, it's heartening to know that technology is being put to good use, from that video, not just in reducing costs, but in keeping things safe as well. Our next segment is looking to ensure that, more importantly, there is a future for manufacturing. Sustainable business practices is the topic in this panel discussion, moderated by Mr. Francesco Betti, head of the Platform for Shaping the Future of Advanced Manufacturing and Value Chains, and a member of the Executive Committee at the World Economic Forum. On his panel, Cohen Debaka, VP, Smart Manufacturing and Artificial Intelligence at Micron Technology, Saj Kumar, Regional Business Lead, Manufacturing at Microsoft Asia, Philippe Metzger, Secretary General and Chief Executive Officer at the International Electrotechnical Commission, and Vishwanath Ramaswamy, Vice President and General Manager at Western Digital Malaysia. Gentlemen.
Dear colleagues, a very good afternoon. I'm Francisco Betti. I lead our work on advanced manufacturing and value chains at the World Economic Forum. And I'm delighted to be here with this excellent group of panelists for a conversation on manufacturing and sustainability. Our Master of Ceremony mentioned before, we are trying to see if there's a future for manufacturing. I do think there is a future for manufacturing for sure, and it's hopefully a bright future. But let's discuss about that in more detail. I will skip the introductions because everyone can see your names behind us at the screen. And let me maybe start with you. You are next to my right. Let me start with you. You were recognized last week with what we call the Sustainability Lighthouse Award, which is an amazing recognition. So first of all, congratulations for that.
Thank you.
And what I'd like to ask you to get the conversation going is, how have you managed as a company to change the mindset in order to approach sustainability in an integrated way? I think that we have seen a lot of companies taking a silo approach or still delegating that to the chief sustainability officer. But in your case, you took a more holistic approach. How was that process and what did you change?
Well, I think, first of all, there's a couple of natural drivers I feel that you can tap on. And if you look to it from a memory perspective, Micron is a memory and storage company. All the innovations that we do, bringing latest generation products, that basically drives benefits for customers. That basically means higher performance products at lower power consumption. So you can think of it like your phone, think of it like a car, like electric vehicles, think of it like data centers, etc. So the demand is really there for more sustainable products from a perspective of performance. So there's a natural kind of way of connecting all the investments that we do in terms of smart manufacturing with sustainability efforts. So that's more kind of like for driving the innovation on our products. But if you think to it internally, of course, there's so much more need for memory and storage over time. So the result of it is we constantly need to grow, and our overall footprint, our ecological footprint is quite significant. And as an industry, if we don't do anything about it, that is a massive problem to solve. So the way we tackle that is to really put ambitious goals out. I think a lot of companies do that, obviously. But I think it's then trying to see which of the technologies are mature enough to already go after in terms of having the right ROIs and having the right benefits behind it. And I think we capture that very quickly in terms of material consumption, energy consumption, etc. There's in general a lot that can be done already on that. And then next to that is obviously looking further ahead and saying, okay, which are the technologies that might not be as mature at this point in time, where we need to collaborate with other companies, with academia, with startups, etc. Knowing kind of where the biggest gaps are for us, so that over time we can make these technologies actually available at a more economical type of rate. And I think that's the key, understanding like what is mature enough for us to go use now, drive that very hard in the company, and have like a top-down type of push around, connecting sustainability with profitability, and then seeing longer term what investments are needed.
Well, thanks for that. And it's clear that there's a vision that comes all the way from the top and then transpired throughout the organization. Maybe let me ask you a follow-on question. I mean, you're responsible for smart manufacturing. You are talking as if you were the sustainability expert, which is amazing and exciting. I think a lot of change is happening. Question is this promise of productivity and sustainability real, and can it go hand by hand?
I think there is a lot of connection between driving smart manufacturing solutions and sustainability. Of course, it goes broader, right? The sustainability topic is not just about driving newer technologies in our operations, but for sure, like the commonality I see in between is to really make sure that you understand really well what the latest technologies are, understanding what the ecosystem is that you need to tap on. You don't do it by yourself. You need to leverage on a whole bunch of partners. And then just making sure that you focus on the right things first, right? Like what drives the biggest dollar. And that's different for every company. For Micron, for example, that we have a very big footprint in process greenhouse gases, large related electricity consumption that we have as part of a very energy intense type of manufacturing. So of course, those are big focus areas for us. In really going into very granular details on acquiring data to understand where all the consumption losses are and trying to minimize that, right? And I think what you can see from a Micron perspective is that traditionally a lot of our focus has been in manufacturing efficiency. And if you start looking at from a sustainability perspective, you start looking at your facilities overall. And typical facility, like our manufacturing equipment gets renewed every couple of years. So that there's a natural cycle of going through the most efficient type of equipment. If you think of it from a facilities point of view, you build them once and they're there for 20 years, 30 years. You're going to renew that constantly. So there's a lot of IoT sensoring devices just to make sure that the measurements are there in a granular aspect. And then, look, a lot of us are engineers, and if the data is there, people will find ways of how to optimize it. So these sort of investments are needed from a measurement point of view. And then, we have the brains to go and tackle them.
Excellent. Well, thanks. And that's a great segue to maybe hand the mic to Saj Kumar. Saj, you have the benefit of being both a manufacturer, a technology and solutions provider, all in one, which gives you a unique perspective and position. Con was talking about the importance of data and visibility. Can you expand on that and tell us why that's important when it comes to sustainability?
Yeah, one of the things that people forget that Microsoft is both an exemplar and an enabler. We manufacture devices, surface devices. We also manufacture servers that go into all our data centers, which is obviously a huge business and part of our portfolio. We look at it everything from design to supply chain to operations and obviously end of life as well in terms of how we actually manage sustainability. And our stated goals are carbon negative by 2030, water positive by 2030. And in order to achieve that, what we want to make sure is that right from designing the products from a plastics perspective, minimizing single-use plastics, maximizing ocean recycled plastic, these are some of the goals in terms of plastic components. But fundamentally, from the way we manage our data and operations, we look at our manufacturing, which largely outsourced, in terms of not just the machines that are operating from an OEE productivity perspective, but also from an energy consumption perspective. Actually, how are we reporting an energy? How are we actually making sure that whatever we stated our goals, we're achieving those goals from a manufacturing perspective? I think that is probably easier than supply chain. Supply chain is hard, and that's where we're trying to get towards the whole tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 suppliers, and that is where we get to the scope 3 emissions, and that's the hard part, and that's where we're now progressing towards.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Saj, for that. I mean, two questions come to my mind. One is, you said 2030, that's ambitious. Are you on track? The second one is, what tools can companies use to monitor and report on emissions?
Yeah, I think in terms of reporting, we are on track. We've been reporting our sustainability every year, ESG report that comes out from Microsoft. But in terms of the actual data that comes in, I think that is where the tools that you can use, of course, the sensors that are there on the shop floor. What I think we are more concerned about, both as an enabler to our customers, is how do you optimize energy consumption? And I think that is where, when we look at, and also optimize water consumption. So that is where, when we start working with some of the heavier energy consumption companies like cement manufacturing, or whether it is glass manufacturing or metals manufacturing, which are very energy intensive companies and industries, how do we make sure that we try to work on those to optimize energy consumption? And that's a really hard part of trying to not just report, but make sure that some of these equipments which are 30, 40 years old, like a furnace, there's no way you're going to scrap that and build a new furnace. So you have to work with the data you have and use AI or machine learning to try to see, can I use real-time sensor data to do real-time set point control, not just for the process output, which is what I think companies always used to focus on, quality, productivity, in terms of making sure I have so many tons of steel coming out at this quality or so many tons of glass, but also make sure that I have my energy consumption as a KPI, and how do you make sure that I'm optimizing to that energy consumption or energy goal. I think that is where if I can reduce 2 to 5% of energy in those intensive industries, that's huge in terms of a carbon footprint. And that's where we're driving.
Excellent. I think optimizing existing assets and processes. And I think that's going to be essentially, especially critically, if we move into a negative outlook and scenario at an economic level, finding ways with the existing equipment and process in place. With that, let me maybe hand it over to Vichy. And the question, Vichy, that I have is that, first of all, you also represent one of the 10 only sustainability lighthouses. What I want to mention is that we have 10 sustainability lighthouses in what we call the Global Lighthouse Network. There are more than 10 million factories out there. So A, your results are outstanding. B, we are still at the very, very beginning of this journey, and we need to accelerate progress. But my question to you is, of course, there are a lot of risks that we are facing related to climate change. What if we don't build resilience from a sustainability standpoint? How could that disrupt your operations?
Yeah, so firstly, thanks, Francisco, for the recognition, and also congratulations to Cohen and the Micron team for their recent recognition on the Sustainability Lighthouse. When we went through this journey last year, I think one of the driving factors was Western Digital as a corporation is committed to, scope 1 and scope 2 reductions. It's 42% that we've committed, and that's been vetted by the Science-Based Initiative. And we're now focusing on scope 3 also in terms of reduction. But to Saj's point, I think one of the challenges that we face, we can do stuff like Cohen mentioned, we can do stuff within our manufacturing floor, and we've done a lot related to lights out manufacturing, lights out automation. And I think if you pan through all of the lighthouses, in some ways, directly or indirectly, they're actually helping sustainability, all the World Economic Forum designated lighthouses. So there is an interconnection, but I think we've got to look beyond that. And that's where the challenge lies, right? Just regionally, as you look within the region, you have energy providers. Every country is different. Some are ahead of the game in terms of how they're transitioning to green energy. Some we need to actually work with the governments in terms of a public-private partnership, trying to influence and explain to them that these are the opportunities that lie ahead. And that's where we need to kind of deviate from just going down the path of RECs and move towards PPA. And again, to Saad's point, I think so that is one of the challenges that I see in the region. But to Saad's point and to Cohen's point, I think the other opportunity I see is how do we interconnect our entire supply chain from a data perspective? I think that still does not exist to a large extent. You still have your tier 3 or your tier 4. There are mom and pop stores, and they don't have that infrastructure. So a big part of that is how can we influence them, and that's where, as lighthouses, I think we have a responsibility to reach out to the community to start influencing, whether it's your tier 1 manufacturing base, tier 2, tier 3. So that they see the opportunity and the benefits that some of us have recognized beyond productivity, beyond efficiency. And if we can do that, I think we can mitigate some of these challenges, because when we get into scope 3, that's another ball game itself, where how do you influence the logistics? How do you move from air to ocean? How do you move from, what else can we do from a sensory base to start moving the needle on that? So I think I personally feel that we should start engaging more, influencing more, sharing some of the benefits that we've seen, and sharing some of the know-how so that people can use that and efficiently use that, right?
And Vichy, have you seen any good or best practices across the network of companies with whom you partner when it comes to supporting your suppliers in embracing digital transformation for sustainability?
Yeah, I think we have this. I mean, it used to be a bi-monthly visit from our local ecosystem of manufacturers in Malaysia, and just recently we had Flextronics who were visiting us, right? And we were working with them, engaging with them, sharing some of the sustainability. They're a lighthouse, but they're not a sustainability lighthouse, right? So how do you engage with them, and how can we share knowledge without sharing IP-related stuff, but share knowledge that can really drive and help move the needle. So that's one of the things that we do.
Well, that's very encouraging, because the reason of why we established the Global Lighthouse Network is to exactly allow for this exchange and help companies learn from each other. Of course, the recognition is important. Now, before the Lighthouse Network, we were used to hear about operations where things were going wrong, not where things were going right. So I think that recognition is important, but the ability to share use cases, information, approaches, I think is what's make the difference. And by the way, lighthouses are willing and hosting visits on a recurrent basis from anyone in the broader manufacturing community, which is fantastic. So thank you to both of you. You mentioned another point which is critical, which is collaboration, partnership, the role of governments, and that's a great segue, maybe Philippe, for you to come in here. Where do you see that cooperation, public-private, playing a big role, and what are the challenges we are facing in that space as well?
Yeah, as somebody who works for a global organization, the leading global organization in standardization in the field of electrotechnology and electronics, of course, this is an exciting journey, because we see the dynamics play out. We see, of course, the sustainability challenges also being put to our fore, and finding solutions for that. So I think you have to start with the global framework you have, and we have a very established global framework. We were founded in 1906, and since then have evolved continuously, and we have more than 20,000 experts today who collaborate to really come up with solutions that are key to electrotechnology, to electricity generation, to electricity distribution, to new developments, of course, including things like smart cities, how we manage the resources. And so in that sense, I think we're very much in a very challenging but also very promising juncture, I think, because we really believe, and that's part of our core strategy, that we can fundamentally contribute to the needs of an all-electric society as a key vector for sustainability. And of course, we can only be successful in that if we also fundamentally contribute to digitalization in these processes through standards which are not only increasingly looking at how systems, how electricity grids, how applications, electrotechnology, electronics work in a digital environment, but also how we can deliver our own core output. Those are the standards and conformity assessment systems that we are running in a digital way. So I think that is all something that spurs collaboration, the need on the one hand, but also I think the willingness. And for us, what is also very important in our case is that we can engage the younger generation. We have an established program where we engage young professionals through their national committees through which they come to the IEC, because without that, I think we will lose the relevance sooner or later. We have to be able to transform ourselves. We have to do it in a way that is, of course, everybody wants to do things very, very quickly, but it still has to be somewhat evolutionary, because we cannot just in a global setting like that throw everything overboard. We have different needs to cater for as well. Not everybody has the same degree of development, the same degree of needs, and we need to make sure we keep our house, our constituency together. So I think that is the key contribution we can make in that context.
Excellent. Well, many thanks for that. And maybe a follow-on question. When it comes to standards interoperability, we keep hearing that that's one of the major roadblocks now, especially when it comes to taking these transformations beyond your own facilities. What is the one priority area where companies should focus, and how can they best partner with you?
Well, I think it depends very much on the segment that we are recovering, because our portfolio is so broad. I mean, interoperability will always be the key issue. Either you are a small, maybe even a small and medium-sized enterprise, and you want to be sure you can actually tap into markets where you use standards that are recognized, because you don't have the ability yourself to just set your own standards. If you are a global player, I think, especially from a perspective of your footprint, and I think we have very interesting cases that have proven how much business potential a larger corporation that is also present in different geographical markets on this world can further its course. It may not be able to penetrate the market if it doesn't use standards that are interoperable, that have been globally recognized. So I think in that sense, I wouldn't just say this is now the segment where we can offer something particular in interoperability, because it's part of our DNA. I mean, the core output of the IEC is to be able to provide global solutions that are globally recognized, that have a global impact, and that empower actors locally or globally to make their case and to further the cause, because we are a non-profit organization, but we have multiple stakeholders, and many of them from industry, from the private sector. And I think we have, in a sense, a business case for them, although we, as an organization, are non-for-profit.
Excellent. Very, very interesting and exciting times to be working in the operational space, indeed. Let me ask you one question, and maybe we can start and go around. Maybe we go back to Cohen. But it's you went through a journey in which you got digital transformation started, and you move all the way towards becoming first a productivity lighthouse, now the sustainability lighthouse. And this is the same question to all of you. What is the one learning from that journey that you may, that our colleagues in the audience should have in mind as they kick off their own journeys?
I think one key call out on it is collaboration. I do think the benefit of the Lighthouse Network is really to share, of course, taking into account IP constraints that we have, but there's a lot of best practices that we can share, and that is the same in terms of an Industry 4.0 transformation, and I feel around the sustainability journey is even more so. There's a lot of common challenges that we have. But if there is one recommendation I would make is that is to be specific on the type of problems that you're looking for partners, right? Like in the case for Micron, for example, we definitely want to innovate around new chemicals, new materials in our manufacturing, or we want to look at better abatement systems, for example. That is what drives improvements in our operations. And I think that can rally a lot of startups, investment money in being very dedicated and targeted towards solving these problems. It's really a matchmaking type of exercise between different technologies and who can provide that, and then the larger companies who are looking for that. And I think the Lighthouse Network is a really good example of that, of bringing these companies together. But I think that's kind of an event like this brings different partners together as well. And I think that's really something that can benefit all of us.
Great. So be clear on the problems you're trying to address, and then make sure you find the right partners and that you have the right collaborative ecosystem. Saj, what is your one learning from the journey and also from what you're seeing across your customers?
Yeah, 2 words to me, it's measure and analyze. And I think the point is not at the high level of measurement, which of course everyone is reporting to ESG. It's in the details. The devil is in the details in terms of how do you kind of break it down and how do you drive it from a consumer perspective. I'm buying a bottle of milk or a pack of chips. What is the carbon footprint of that particular product? And then going all the way back to manufacturing, to supply chain, breaking down a truckload into what the carbon footprint of the truckload is to that individual packet. That's hard. And I think that's where once you start driving that level of detailed analysis, that's when you start seeing opportunities. And I think all of this would result in opportunities from energy saving to profitability to cost reduction. All of these are kind of related. So it's not just a reporting, but it's actually trying to get to the bottom line.
Excellent. So measuring and analyzing, that sounds very, very, very interesting, and it is a priority indeed. A question that comes to my mind is that, have you seen as a result of their measuring and analytics, companies changing the way in which they make their products? So not just changing the processes to achieve sustainability, but also that leading into a redesign, reconfiguration of their products?
Yeah, I can't give you a specific company, but I know of a dairy manufacturer that's actually doing the analysis in terms of the product carbon footprint, which is what their customers demanded. And then going back to seeing, okay, if I need to bring it down, where do I source from? Do I need to build a factory here? Do I need to build a factory in some other locations? So it actually helps you even in designing your supply chain network in order to minimize the end carbon footprint to your customer. I think that is where we're heading towards in terms of long-term strategy for supply chains.
Excellent. I think that that's where we're going to see a lot of changes going forward, because we may not be able to achieve our net zero targets if we continue making the same products in the same way just by transitioning on the energy front or other area. That's a very, very interesting area to explore. Bishi.
So I have a couple. The first is, I think, the end-to-end digital transformation. I mean, it means different things for different areas. If you look at the supply chain, it means how do you digitize your entire supply chain? That means how do you work with your partners? How do you work with your suppliers? How do you influence them to make that change and then drive that change as well and help them out as part of this process, right? The second part of it is also in terms of how do we go back and look at our product life cycles. I mean, this is one thing that we're trying to do. Western Digital is trying to do that. There is some public information on that in terms of product lifecycle analysis, and then we actually work with our customer base, and we are encouraging them to kind of send back their products to us. We're doing that on the hard drive front, and we're going to look into doing that on the flash side as well. So I think it's again comes down to the one word of influence, right? How do you influence each other, whether it's your supplier, it's your customer, and with that you can influence the entire supply chain. And by doing that, like Saj mentioned, whether it's a milk manufacturer or whether it's a cement manufacturer, we'll get there, but we have to do a little bit of this before we get there.
Excellent. And we just a follow-on question on that front. I mean, you alluded to circularity, right? And this idea of enabling reuse, recycling, remanufacturing. What are the challenges you are seeing in that space? Why are we not doing more? Because that could bring another major contribution to climate change, but also we are likely going to enter a phase in which scarcity of materials, of energy, of anything, of talent even, is going to be a key denominator.
Yeah, I think part of the issue is on the material base. I mean, that's one of the challenges that Cohen touched on. There's still, in the past, I mean, we've always looked at materials and when we use it, not with the lens of sustainability. You always wear a cost or productivity or efficiency, how it integrates into your manufacturing space. You look at all of those factors to make those decisions. But now when you go back and start asking yourself the question, how can I design a product differently such that whether it's the packaging, whether it's whether it's the casing, whether it's all of that, I think you start to make headway. And one example that comes to mind is the wine manufacturers are doing that, right? Once you set your focus on it, I think there is a way we can always, as humans, we can come up with an innovative solution. So that's where we're looking at in terms of how do we start engaging into that space and make some changes.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And if you please hand over your mic, maybe the question now is, what is the one recommendation for companies, but also for governments? You work with both in a, and you have a large ecosystem. What is the recommendation you could give them?
Yeah, maybe if I can quickly also answer the question you asked the other colleagues, especially since I was going to say something very similar to Saj. The IEC's patron is Lord Kelvin. Lord Kelvin said, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So I think, like Saj, I would definitely say from our perspective, from our mission as well, measuring things, creating common understanding, common definition of the terminology, of the challenges, and then also how you measure the actual metrics that will then influence the solution, because that will be something key, especially when it comes to sustainability challenges that we have. Because we have a very broad portfolio of standards and conformity assessment. We claim, and I think we have narratives to underscore that in one way or the other, standards and conformity assessment services from us, they underpin each and every one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. But that, you can say, is a sort of a lucky coincidence because of what we work in, what our expertise is, and that fits the bill in that sense. But we want to go beyond that. We want to become much more deliberate in targeting gaps that we have today in standardization, where we can develop standards and conformity assessment that will specifically help sustainable development goals. And that's why the measurement and the analysis is so important to come to an even more deliberate action. Our action is the output is standards, conformity assessment, with the outcome that this contributes to the greater good and to sustainability. But we want to go further in this journey and be even more deliberate. So we have a number of processes in place now that we want to exploit over the coming years to become even better in supporting sustainability. And so to your specific question on the collaboration, I think what is really maybe also unique is that we gather the stakeholders from the different countries that are our members, and it's really a global organization. Most countries are somehow represented in the IC, be it as members or as affiliates. And those representatives are already reflecting a broad set of stakeholders nationally. So we have stakeholders who come from a government regulatory perspectives. Other are really very strong foothold in industry. And I think that helps then if you come together as a global community, you tap into views, into needs from specific backgrounds that you can then deal with and see how you want to find a solution that captures actually ultimately, because we're consensus-based, captures needs of everyone. There's not a one-size-fits-all always, but at least you can really be sure that you've had an input that is very broad. And so that would then be a typical situation where a dialogue between the industry, between the governments, between civil society takes place. Because again, we want to serve with our outputs, with our results. We want to serve the global community, economy, but also society.
Excellent. And you mentioned something that it's sticking in my mind, which is common taxonomy, common language, common definitions. I think that measuring individually as a company, it's important, but to be able to measure in a consistent way and report in a consistent way, we need to align on taxonomy. I think that that's a very critical point if we want to move forward in alignment. Thank you. Maybe one more question for the two lighthouses we have in the room. I think that we have been claiming that the chapter 1 of the fourth industrial revolution is somehow close. Why is it close? Because we have many companies who have demonstrated the operational and financial impact that can be delivered when you transform an individual site through fourth industrial revolution technologies. Now, the second chapter, or the chapter that you are all opening now, it's about scale. So my question to you is, how do we go to scale? How are you planning within your own company to go from one sustainability lighthouse to making every site a sustainability lighthouse? And then back to your point before, how do you start bringing on board other in the network? Do you want to start, Koen?
Well, I mean, very practically for Micron, we have many manufacturing sites, both front-end and assembly and test, and they are globally. So, of course, if we were to do these initiatives one by one in every factory, that would be quite a journey to go through. It has to go through in every factory, but we do overlay it with kind of a global organization that really tries to drive it across the world. And it comes down with creating the foundations, for example, data backbones systems that are common across, the same like taxonomy, but also within the different factories, even if we had acquired these factories over time. So there's a lot of standardization that we try to upfront do there, because that drives a lot of the scalability afterwards. We have an overall rule that any project that we deploy in one factory, 3 months later needs to be deployed across the entire network. And that obviously drives a lot of design and agreement up front already, because not all the factories drive the same products in the network, but driving it kind of upfront kind of alignment and making sure that all the kind of requirements, etc., are part of any solution that you build. That makes that afterwards you can scale it, and any adjustment you then need to make or any improvement on top of that then becomes something that immediately scales across the network. I do think that's a very important factor. I mean, think of it from an ROI perspective. You do need to do the investment only once, and you get the benefit across your entire network. And that's a fundamental differentiator on can you make the ROI for all the investments.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
So again, I think it's a little bit of a slightly different ball game for us because we've got both the hard drive and the flash businesses. The last round when we went through the Lighthouse certification, our sister site in Prachinburi in Thailand was part of the lighthouses that was recognized, along with the site in Malaysia. But this round, we were actually very happy to see our sister site in Shanghai on the flash side actually also being recognized for both the lighthouse as well as a sustainability lighthouse. So that was part of this round. So I think just going back to the question that you asked, it is our intent to scale. But the challenge is, again, with these varied manufacturing, how do you standardize and how do you measure to Saad's earlier point? So we actually internally within the company have a way to measure the maturity index of, whether it's your lights out automation or how it impacts sustainability. We actually have that as part of our process, and we've shared some of that even with people who visit us as part of our regular visits. So that is one of the guiding principles that we use in terms of determining whether the site is mature enough to partake in being certified as a lighthouse. And then, if, for example, let's say there is one aspect of lights out automation that cuts across all manufacturing, doesn't matter which manufacturing, right? Then there's a lot of knowledge sharing that goes across. It's more like a platform-based approach that we use across the company. And that's the methodology that we use. And we've seen some success with it, especially as we transcend between the hard drive side and the flash side. So, and we will look to do that. But again, I do want to go back to another aspect of the comments that even Philippe touched on, which is the standards. I think having that standard at an international level would really be helpful. Something like an ISO standard for sustainability or for lights out automation. We have our own versions of it, but if we can come up with something that is more macro in scale, then everyone's got that common measure, to Saad's point, that you can reference to and say, okay, I'm 50% there, I'm 60% there, and then you go work through it. So I think those are some of the factors I think that would help.
Excellent. Philippe, I could see you nodding. Do you want to comment on that one?
I was very happy with that. Yeah, come to the IEC, please. That's what I would like to say to everyone, because it's precisely on these kind of opportunities. It's really opportunities, I think, that we can work, that we can provide a framework with. And to your question of scalability, probably for us, the challenge poses itself from a slightly different angle than from the three colleagues here, because again, we're non-profit. We have a global public function. But we certainly think also in terms of scalability, essentially through two vectors. One is digitalization, our processes, and the form, the shape and form we will ultimately put standards and conformity assessment at the disposal of the user in a digital format. And the other is inclusiveness, because that's still something where we have a big potential as well. We are a global organization, but we can do much better in terms of bringing also members who are maybe not today empowered with resources to the same degree, to bring them more into the family and to make them more active members. And if we crack those two vectors, or at least if we keep improving those, I think we have a good case for scalability also for what we do. But I would definitely thank also Vichy for these remarks, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to continuously reach out. That's why I'm here today, to also be directly in the region. We have a regional center also in the Asia Pacific region in Singapore, which is helping us as well to be more connected with the reality on the ground. So yes, I think that's a very happy conclusion for me of this discussion.
Excellent. That's great. And Saj, any final thoughts from your side when it comes to scaling? How do we scale and the importance of scaling?
To me, the message is strategic sustainability. Have that strategic sustainable goals with operational excellence. Make sure that while you're running it, make sure that you're constantly running your plants and measuring your supply chain while keeping your goals intact. That's the message.
Brilliant. And we're at the end of our time together, but let me ask you one final question. In one word, and we can go around, how do you feel about the future of manufacturing and sustainability?
Not one word, but never been as bright, I think.
Great.
Positive.
Brilliant.
Sustainably positive.
Sustainably thrilled.
Excellent. You all failed the one-word test, but I think that we can close the session with a lot of optimism. Thank you so much for being here with us today, and we look forward to continue working together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, thank you, Francisco. I too have never met a panelist who passed the one-word test, so that's fine. That was a really insightful panel with lots of good advice for other companies out there. Our next panel looks at some of the most important issues faced by manufacturers today, and it will be moderated by Jackie Tan, Director, Industrial Digital at Becker. Please also welcome our panel of experts, Willie Reed, General Manager, Safety, Security, Computer Vision and Industry Edge at Dell Technologies, Jonathan Tan, Planning and Logistics Manager, Global Supply Chain at GlaxoSmithKline, Cecilia Koo, General Manager of Delta Electronics International Singapore, Joseph Wong, Director, Technology and Transformation, Smart Manufacturing at Fong's Engineering and Manufacturing Private Limited, and finally, Prashasta Kumar, Senior Director at Emerson Automation Solutions, Singapore.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to this panel discussions. Today's discussion, we're going to talk about Industry 4.0, specifically how we're going to drive Industry 4.0 journey, identifying opportunities and, of course, challenges at the same time. We have the honor today to have 5 speakers on stage. First of all, we have Willie from Dell Technology. Willie has been in Dell for past 10 years, driving market solutions and, of course, execution strategies within multiple verticals. At the same time, right now, he's focusing on Industry 4.0, specifically helping companies to leverage modern infrastructures, enterprise edge, and of course, 5G cybersecurity at the same time. Next, we have Joseph, an SME champion, actually, with Fong Engineering. Joseph has been driving the whole Industry 4.0 transformation for Fong Engineering, moving them from different supply chains, and now they focus on medical devices. So I'm sure Joseph has lots to share along his transformation journey at the same time. Besides that, we do have Cecilia. Cecilia from Delta Electronics. Cecilia has been a real leader in driving transformations. Of course, at the same time, she brings innovative green solutions to enable Singapore in driving sustainable digital transformations. We do have Prashata from Emerson's, a true leaders in really driving Industry 4.0, at the same time providing the right technology solutions to companies. And I think there's a lot to share about how companies can leverage on Emerson's digital and, of course, software solution at the same time. Last but not least, a true leader in pharmaceutical transformations, Jonathan from GSK. Jonathan will be sharing about his journey, his experience actually from starting to drive the transformations in factory, but now moving on to the supply chain war as well. So thank you guys for making your time. And of course, thanks to the audience for making your time here today. So if I could start right now to really come to the points that, for you to really talk about Industry 4.0 and how do you overcome this. Cecilia, globally, the manufacturing industry is undergoing rapid transformations. There's a need for companies to really speed up transformations while keeping in mind sustainability goals. So how does Delta view this transformation at the same time?
We actually had, we did our digitalization exercise. Step back a little bit. We did a lot of small steps. We did a lot of detailed asset management and capability of each machine. And we also do digitalization for all our production line, factory around the world. And because we actually have 69 factories around the world, so each factory produce different products. So during this period of time, I think I 4.0 for Delta, we actually started long time ago. But COVID and, the whole disruption, the US trade war, the actual Ukraine-Russia war actually made us accelerated, utilizing our digitized data to analyze how we can put our engineers together, how we can actually use different technology like AR, VR, MR, XR, together for the engineer to assemble the machinery in a different location that we want to build, right? So in supply chain, how do we use the AI model? In the past, if we use our human brains, we can only analyze 2-dimensional data, 3-dimensional data, and maybe 8 parameters. But for AI modeling, we can actually do 8-dimension, 26 parameters for all the supplier data supplied to us. Then we can actually run the model and we can select the best supplier for us an alternative supplier. So I think all of this actually put together, it make us move the factory faster and manage the new factory faster as well. And with all the data, the grid management, the energy management, for the AI modeling, how we actually utilize different power to support the production, it actually helps us to understand how much green energy that we need to make it net zero, or I don't even call it net zero, but maybe carbon neutral. How much green credits that I need to buy in order for my factory to be a green factory, right? So I think it's a lot of different steps that put together, but COVID and the past 2 or 3 years just accelerated the process and forced us, a manufacturer, to put every single steps together.
Sure, thank you. So we hear a lot about AR, VR, and right now we hear about AI, being into this whole transformation approach. So Prashanta, how do you view AI in whole transformation journey? And could you share with us, a sample case study how Emerson's helped companies to adopt AI as part of the transformations?
Sure. So as you all know, Emerson Automation is in the space of, providing measurement devices, sensors, and field devices. And of late, post the pandemic and during the pandemic, many of our industrial customers in the process industry, are facing a challenge of how fast can we change and how fast can we be future ready. So in this whole backdrop, one of our customers, which is in the chemical manufacturing space, operating all across Asia, and they have been, of course, a long-term partner for Emerson for a very long time. They were facing a similar challenge of, how can we move away from manual processes to more of automation. And while doing that, also leverage on some of the recent technological advances which were coming in. So with these combined objectives, I think the team in Emerson, the systems and software business which I represent, we help create a roadmap, help create some sort of a digital transformation maturity model. And using that, we helped prioritize some of the initiatives. And the first foundational element of this initiative was to consolidate data. Identify avenues where data was missing, where data was predominantly being captured manually. So that was, I think, one of the first initiatives which we helped them work on. And we, of course, have technologies to also, help this customer on sustainability initiatives, help implement sensors on steam traps. So those kind of technologies. And then once the data was in place, I think that's where then we moved the needle to more advanced sort of technology initiatives involving artificial intelligence and predictive machine learning.
Sure, thank you. That's a great sharing about leveraging on data to drive, analytics and of course artificial intelligence. If I can share the next question to Jonathan, I think the previous two speakers, Prashanta talked about data, Cecilia talked about AI. Jonathan, can you share with us your experience? What were some key takeaways during your factory transformations? Does data analytics play a key role, and how does this impact to skills and knowledge of your workforce today?
Thanks, Jackie. So I think for a site or a function or a group to embark on the digitalization journey, right? I think the most important thing is whether the initiatives that you're driving, how does it align to the business objective and the values that you want to bring. Yeah. So I think for us at a management level, after we did our Siri assessment with Jackie, who was helping us, using the benchmarking tool. So what we did was we identified the current state that we were at, and then we identify the ambition and we translate that into achievable targets for the team. And of course, with that, we then identify those projects we want to do, and we get the sponsors, resources to support those projects. Yeah. So I think as we are working on all these step change project and doing the alignment, so there is also this continuous improvement energy that's at the ground, right? So what we did was we expanded the capabilities of our existing system so that we can bridge some of our digitalization gaps also.
One of the key topics I think in current industry is now on two topics I would say is AI and of course digital twins. From your opinion, how do you see digital twin being utilized by your company or potentially to be utilized by your factory as well?
Okay, so I think for digital twin, we definitely have been doing data analytics. Yeah, so that's a big part of the digital journey that we did. So we have, over the last 3.5 years, did 30 over use cases. So these are all data-driven type of analytics. So we have made significant progress in it, helped the company save a lot in terms of the cost of waste, cost of poor quality. Yeah, and we've driven down those. So we also embark on digital twin using the first principle models, and we use those for some of the process as well, and that helps in driving down some of the, improve our mass efficiency, and that's also on the sustainability aspect. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. So really, it'd be great to hear your perspective actually. How does you see this from US perspective and how digital is being deployed here in Singapore?
Yeah, I think from a digital twin perspective, we've seen lots of different instantiations of that. And we were talking about this just moments ago. And I think we see different varying steps of digital twins, from just very simple CAD and automation at the top level, the dashboarding, to all the way going down the stack and creating creating clones and creating automation. We've even seen some complexity in environments where I've created a digital twin for a particular component, maybe a robotic arm on a factory line, but I want to expand that out to potentially multiple factories or multiple factory lines. And so the kind of the concept of a twin of a twin really is still something, I think it's in its infancy in really trying to understand, how to actually not just create the models, not just operate the models, not just simulate the models, but to own the entire process and ecosystem. There's not one company, not one ISV that delivers that entire stack out of the box. And so it's a real ecosystem that you have to develop in order to deliver that. And we see that across all industries, whether I'm talking manufacturing and production lines, or if I'm talking about what's going on in healthcare and life sciences and from a research perspective. But digital twins absolutely is dominating, many of the discussions. And I think one of the biggest challenges is just getting access to data, getting data out of silos, and getting the right people, both from the business side, from the factory side, from the OT side, and from the IT side, to create the model, to work together to create the model in order to start the process.
Great, thanks for sharing. So from your perspective, I think really it would be great to hear, what were the key challenges you see from manufacturing perspective, when they embark onto digitalizations? And what will be your recommendations for companies who are about to or even in the mid of transforming their factories?
Yeah, definitely. I'd say the first is again data location. It's it's in silos. It's owned by a particular application or a particular stack, right? So I may have a PLC controller that has something here. I may have my SCADA environment. I may have data all over, and being able to access that data, to be able to unlock that data, is really the first thing. The second thing is that the modern factory and kind of the remarkable factory that we all want to work towards, it requires a modern approach. It requires a modern infrastructure, and it's not a cloud infrastructure. It's not an on-prem. It's a multi-cloud modern infrastructure that allows me to follow what's happening from a data gravity perspective, right? I need to have compute at the far edge. I need to aggregate data back to a near edge. I need to be able to do analytics inside the factory. I need to be able to do cross compares up in a cloud. And I think that convergence of IT workflow or OT workflows to IT pressure to modernize infrastructure so that I can protect myself for things like cybersecurity threats or those sorts of things is the biggest challenge, is getting, I think, some of those two teams to talk and to collaborate. But I would say the building block or the first step is really to look at how do I get data out of those islands and really start to do meaningful work with them.
Can I add something here?
Please.
I think data is super important. We just recently helped a car manufacturer consolidated 18 factories around the world, and they have at least 22 different different solution providers in the whole production, whatever areas. So the first thing that we do is, first of all, you have to look at the data, and you have to have a consistent definition across all factories at all levels. And even if we want to monitor and have an alert system, and because it's a Japanese car manufacturer, so we actually simplified the alert system to just green, yellow, and red. And it is surprising, one factory flagged as red lights. The other factory, the definition is green lights, right? So how do we actually consolidate data using a consistent approach and have a very simple alert system so for the monitoring people understand, hey, this is just green across the board. So I think data and how we actually utilize data, how we have a consistent definition of data, super important. Then we can have like AI modeling.
I do have a burning question though. A lot of customers or even manufacturing companies we spoke to, the first question they will always say, actually, we do have data, right? We have data in multiple forms. So it would be great to hear from your perspective, how do you define data in your way? Is paper considered data? Is writing information on piece of system considered data? Or how should we define data? So maybe it'd be great to hear from, Joseph, your opinions, and of course from others as well. How do you see data in your day-to-day operations?
I think data is everywhere. The manufacturing records is data. The process is data. Everything that you do, whether is it structured or unstructured, they are all different form of data. So in that aspect, I think every company, whether big or small, MNC, SME, we are dealing with data every day, visibly or whether invisible to us. So the question is like what Cecilia have just said, whether do you consolidate into a single source of truth, and then Yep.
Perfect, thank you. So Joseph, just to bring on to that topic, being an SME in digital transformations, could you share with us your experience? How do you drive the transformation journey? And what were the key takeaways that you want to share with the audience here?
I would say being an SME doing digital transformations is a big undertaking. So right in the center of the equations when we actually execute our transformations journey since 2018, I remember the most important thing that we have in mind is customer-centric. Whatever we do, transformations, we must add value to customers, because transformations will bring about disruptions in our operations. Customer will get very concerned. Our key customers, hey, you are doing these transformations. Are you going to disrupt my delivery? Are you going to affect my quality? Are you going to increase my cost or disrupt my cost? I want to know. So, at the end of the day, customers need to, we need to get a buy-in from customers. So this is one of the things that we have to put up front to consider before we implement. Of course, there are a lot of other takeaways that along the way we learn, such as how do you plan your finance capex. SME, we are very concerned about cash flow. Technology, we are very good at our core business, manufacturing, but you're talking about technology, you're talking about transformation. That's not our forte, that's not our main line of business. We don't know what we don't know. Is that the best technology, the latest technology, the most so-called fit kind of technology we are going to implement? We don't know the solution. So that is also one of the concerns that we need to do a lot of homework. Besides, I think there's also the operational disruptions, which I mentioned just now. But the most important, I think, the most important of all is the people. We need to get our people to be ready at every stage, before, during, and after. Before, we really need to get their buy-in, why the company need to do these transformations, what is the entire industry trend, what happens if we don't do this this transformation, what will happen to the company moving forward, what will happen to the job, what will happen to us. They need to be involved. So before, we got to get a buy-in. During the transformation, we also get them to be involved, because that sense of belonging, that impact to them. And after the transformations, I remember we also have actually, in a way, kind of a mini town hall to advise all the employee. We already come to one phase of transformations. Moving forwards, what are we going to do to upscale ourselves? In order to apply the so-called future skill, to use the technology to apply to the job. So these are all the various takeaways that we have.
Great, very, very nice sharing. Thank you, Joseph. I think there's lots of takeaway here. For instance, people, capex, how to balance cost, and of course, return on investment. So a question probably to Prashata. I think from an end user perspective, of course, customers always ask, what is the return on investment? If you're going to ask me to invest a significant amount, when I'm going to see investment or return on investment, what are the benefits? So it'd be great to hear from you. How do you, talk to clients to balance, cost and ROI at the same time?
Yeah, no, it's a very relevant question. And again, we're talking about Industry 4.0 in this forum today. But if you remember, if you go back in the past, ever since the industrial revolution started, change is the only constant. And I think every decade or 2 decades, there's a massive transformational change, either in the form of technology or different ways of working. Now, with this backdrop of constant change, the challenge for the board or challenge for the C-suite is how do we, convince our organization to adopt this change? So the business case becomes very relevant. And I think this business case also is an evolving living document or a living, version. And the biggest challenge which we face when dealing with some of our process industry customers is how do we help them create a viable, a sustainable business case, which not only takes care of the needs of today, the challenges of today, but also is future ready to take on the challenges of what might happen 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road. Now, incorporating all these things is an extensive exercise. And I think, as Willie mentioned, organizations implementing I 4.0 are also facing a unique challenge of how do we converge the IT organization, the business organization, and the operations organization. I think these 3 stakeholders have different objectives and more often than not, conflicting objectives. So how do we incorporate all these things into that business case which I spoke about, which talks about how much investment do I need to make, at what sequence I need to invest this money, and how will I get those returns in a gradual and sustainable manner. And usually, the other dilemma which organizations face is technology is changing very fast. We spoke about AI, ML, and again, this space is evolving so fast. You create a business case today. In 2 years down the line, there is a new evolution, a new technology which comes in. And how do you make sure that whatever you invested before, you're able to achieve those ROI before you embark on the next technology upgrade? So I think all these challenges are really real for our customers. And that's where a collaboration, a trust-based collaboration and partnership between the solution provider and the end user is very critical.
Perfect. Well said. I think partnership between the solution provider and customers, right, is always the key recipe for success, right? Great. So maybe Jonathan, how do you balance that? When you need to invest or seek for management approval for technology investments, obviously you get some inputs from solution provider, but how do you convince your management team to invest in this at the same time?
Okay, so I think the business case, a lot of time is really how much you need to spend and what is your ROI. And not only that, you have to balance between sustainability and also the group, the alignment of the vision. So it's how you can sell the story, and not just based on the ROI, but you have to be able to see what's the long-term plan and how it aligns to the group, how it aligns to the people, and also the productivity elements and the sustainability elements. We should get all these together to help build the business case.
Great, thank you. Maybe a question to Willie. In terms of sustainability, how does Dell view this? How does a company view sustainability and digital transformation all together? It'd be great to hear your opinions.
It's a very good question, right? And underpinning everything that Dell does is an ESG, sustainability, our social impact. It's one of the things that I do love about kind of how Dell looks and approaches the world, right? And if I look at how I need to transform, right? We've been through several layers of transformation, as an IT company over the years. And if you look at the major trends, right? I look at edge computing and its impact inside the factory. I look at what may be coming from 5G and how 5G is starting to provide different types of use cases for us in certain markets. I look at AI, ML, we talked about digital twins, cybersecurity, you kind of continue to go on. The key trend is that to keep costs aligned, right? I need to put data and I need to put compute. I need to put those resources in the places that makes most sense. And I need to provide a flexible model, not just from, cost controls, but, how I consume those technologies, right? And as I mentioned, it's not a one size fits all approach, right? Some factories or some customers are approaching things differently. Some are further down a layer of their processes. It is very important for, from our perspective, to be a very open platform that provides that. But absolutely everything we do is underpinned with sustainability. And Dell itself is a major manufacturer, right? Then that's something that we've put in place in our own company is a net zero and a 2030 and a 2050 moonshot goals to really drive that those goals across the company.
Thank you. I think that sustainability in this context is really important. I think for companies to really embark onto digital transformations, it's not just about productivity anymore. It's really about how can they be more sustainable, but at the same time being productive. Yep.
Absolutely.
Great. So in that context, Cecilia, I think you have been helping companies to embark onto digital transformations and sustainability. Where are the potential pitfalls you see during these transformations, and what do you advise them, to avoid or potential pitfall and pit trap as well?
I think nowadays everyone talk about flexibility, right? Because change is the constant factor every day in our lives. So everyone crave for flexibility. But then if we give flexibility a lot of flexibility, then everything is customized. When everything is customized, how can you standardize? You're going to have so many different initiatives. And when you have so many different initiatives, then it complicates the whole model, right? So then we actually learned the hard way. To give flexibility, the starting point is to standardize everything. Once you standardize everything, then you find the bigger commonality among all of them. Then you can give a bit of freedom and flexibility with the same data set for different purposes, right? So then it's so much easier said than done. But we actually collected all the data, we standardized them, and then we actually look at how we can actually simplify it. And we simplify the model as well, the AI model. And we also learned the hard way. We have too many customized AI models. And when we have too many customized AI models, we can't even compare the results, right? So then we try to compare, we try to consolidate different AI models together into one AI model, but then it complicates the whole thing. So I think the pitfall is we want flexibility. So when we go to a supplier, first of all, is it open source? Is it easier for them to plug and play and upgrade? And then second is we have to have a standardized and consistent data set. And once we have that, then we can simplify the whole process and give flexibility at the end. It's not that easy.
It's interesting to hear about flexibility. So from an SME perspective, Joseph, how do you see flexibility and operational needs? At the same time, you need to transform a factory. Customers may demand certain flexibility. How do you balance these two, flexibility and operational needs?
Well, I think when we talk about operation need from our perspective as a manufacturer SME, we are talking about when we doing our transformations, we still need to take care of our day-to-day operations. We still need to deliver, still need to run productions. So, and transformations is a big undertaking, When in Fong Engineering, when we do these transformations, we have a lot of old machines, legacy machines. So some of the machines are just simply ineffective for us to continue to use it when we adopt new technology. And even though we say that we can use some edge device to extract data, but it's so ineffective. So we just have to replace it. So it comes to a point that a lot of major decisions have to be made to replace some of the machines. And then the next level is the infrastructures. The factory infrastructures are not suitable for that, adopting the new technology. So we have to do a lot of drastic changes in operations. So things such as replacing the machines, we have to change the entire utility infrastructures. We have to even the flooring. We have to change the way the oil mist being sucked up, the air cons. All this has to be changed. To us, it's a big undertaking. So at the same time, we need to run productions in the same factory. We can't afford to so-called, hey, let's get a new factory, temporarily ship all machines, run a new factory, and then redo all this and then ship it back. It's just not possible, not practical. So what we do is to balance between this operation need and this flexible. We do it phase by phase. We actually literally do while we are tearing down the ceiling board, changing the aircon, change the machine, change the electrical distributions, and change the air compressor machine. We do it phase by phase in three phases. We divide our whole factory floor in three phases, and progressively we change the machines, do the implementations. And if you ask me now, recalling back, I would think it is just like when you're driving, you're changing a tire at the same time. Is it impossible? Yeah, it's very difficult, but it's possible. If you have detailed planning. That's how we balance it.
Perfect, thank you. That's very great insight, Joseph, once again. Jonathan, questions to you actually. We do know that right now there's certain shortages of workforces. Companies are struggling actually to find skilled laborers. And for companies like pharmaceutical industry, there always need to be continuous operations, let it be manufacturing, quality, supply chains. How do you see this trend going forward then for GSK?
I think in Singapore, right, it's definitely a tight labor market. So resource is difficult to get. Yeah. So I think in terms of, for me, I come from a manufacturing side. So I think automation is definitely something we need to do. So like what Fong was saying, right? So if you need to make those changes, you need to make when the plant is still running. So those we face similar challenges as well. So I think with the automation that comes, you then have to sequence control them, automate them so that you can have productivity efficiency. And for us, because we make drugs, right? So we have all this GMP environment. So we also look at the digitalization, whereby we want to digitize all these batch records so that we no longer need to make all these manual checks, so that we can also pass and release all these records faster. Yeah, so all these electronic record is also something that we have been doing for a while now. Yeah, and in order to do all this AI, right? If you don't digitize all this data, how are you going to use the records, right? So that's why we did a lot of this. And I think what we want to do is that when we have all this, right, we have already done those for process improvements, building all these data analytics use case for process improvement. But I think the next thing to do is really to capture all this productivity data, like how long certain people do certain things. You know, let's say in the lab, I got 10 people, are they doing it? Some may be doing very fast, some may be doing very slow. So if we have all these data available, right, I think we can do a lot more productivity improvements in that area. So then I think that will drive the resource. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. I think resource management plus productivity gain is a key thing for you, which is good to know. Prashanta, I think as what Jonathan said, there's a need to look into technology readiness. There's also a need to look into workforce readiness. How do you see companies, your clients actually, in terms of readiness towards, transformations or even adopting AI at the same time?
Yeah. No, I think we've spoken at length about some of the challenges organizations are facing today in terms of, changing technology at a very rapid pace, achieving ROI in the quickest possible time. Now, in this backdrop, I think some of the more tactical challenges which our clients face is the, what I see as the pilot trap. Now, we've spoken about how a business case needs to be defined, but in some of these new innovative technologies, especially clients who operate like multiple plants across a region, say 20, 30 plants. Now, they would like to see some sort of a proof of concept or some sort of a pilot done before they can actually visualize what this technology is capable of. And this is where I've seen examples of pilots being successful, which again does not meet the full objectives of the board. They would like to see more variants of the pilots. And then I think this endless loop of doing pilots, basically is a waste of resource, not just from a solution provider perspective, but also from a company's perspective. For every pilot, you have to devote, your end users, your operators, take away their time from their day-to-day operations to devote on this pilot. So I think this tactical challenge is something which we see quite often in Emerson with our clients. And then this is where we help them the most to define very tangible success criteria or completion criteria, which can eventually, lead to a faster decision making and a faster rollout.
Thank you, Prashanta. I can see that Cecilia is nodding her head like, yes, that's the situation I'm facing that. So Cecilia, can you share more about your experience?
It is a pain. you do one POC and then you're going to do another POC and then you just multiple POCs. And because the scale of POC is always small. So you won't be able to see the economic scale, and it's very difficult to calculate ROI. So it's very challenging, but also understand, for a lot of factories or companies, when they want to do digitalization or even do smart factory, without seeing something, it's always easier for you to see something so then you believe. Right, especially for company, you have to commit so much, right? So we also understand it, but I think at the end of the day, probably we need to design something like multiple POC come together, and then we can do a simulation and saying that this is the benefit that we should be able to see, and so then the company, when they see the first POC working, then it will be the projects, not the multiple POC.
Sure, thank you for that. Maybe Billy, how do you, let's say with your clients, it'd be good to know how do you ensure a successful POC then? How do you guarantee success? I'm sure this is a question everyone will ask you.
Yeah, it's very good, and it's I'm nodding my head with them as well, right? POCs they just continue to go and go and go, and I think one of the approaches that Dell has done is to invest in some of these big market opportunities. Again, I mentioned edge, I mentioned telco and 5G. Those are those emerging technologies where I don't really know how those may impact positively or negatively in my environment. And that's the part where we see, at least from an infrastructure layer, the importance of the POC to provide that operational foundation for how I want to operate it. And so one of the things that we're doing is taking technology partnerships and the pieces that I would need to layer in for a smart factory and validating those in advance, going through the process of looking at an outcome-based approach and saying, hey, you're looking for an OEE solution that is going to entail a PTC or a litmus or a Telit or one of these technologies that I need. Plus, I need to have some sort of automation. Plus, I need to tie into the historian. I need to tie into SAP. So we're taking that approach to say, let's do that engineering work inside of Dell so I can package that component, I can package that part. So when you get to your POC, I don't have to continue to reinvent or go back and do those sorts of things. And we'll only continue to expand that ecosystem, right? And that's a big difference, right? We've been a very horizontal focused company. We're a very vertical focused, outcome focused company as a result of what's happening in this transformation era.
Right, thank you for that. I think it's really being focused and what Joseph and Jonathan say, customer centric, right? Understanding what customer needs and then really addressing that properly, strategically as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Perfect, thank you. I think we come almost to the end of these panel discussions. For audience, I think it'd be great for you to advise them, if I were to start or in the mid of transforming my factory or my companies, what would be your recommendations? What should be something that I should really focus on and get it right from beginning or throughout the journey as well? Maybe really want to start first?
Sure, I'll start. And again, I just kind of taking off what we just talked about. I think, we've talked about remarkable factory or smart factory. It starts with what's that foundational layer that I'm going to need. I need compute. I need network. I need these things at the factory, at the edge. So really understanding how to apply modern infrastructure into the factory without disrupting things that have been running operationally for 30 years, right? I need something that scales. And I think that's a really important foundation to that that we look for as well.
Joseph?
I will share from the SME perspective, right? Because we are SME. I think if what you need to do right in the front, I think first and foremost, transformations are a big undertaking. You need to have the top management buy-in. You have to be top down. We are very lucky for Phong Engineering. We are very lucky because my boss, the CEO, he himself is the project sponsor. He believes in it and he participates very strongly and all throughout the whole journey. So because there's a lot of major decisions we have to make, capex, opex, and disruptions, we need to make it fast and major. So that is very important. You need to have that top management buy-in. Then the second thing I think also important is you need to get it right is the purpose, the why. Why do you want to do this undertaking, these transformations? The moment you have a strong why, you got a purpose. You believe. Then when you execute it, you meet a lot of challenges. You will then be able to stay on the course. When you have a strong why, you will find out how to do it. There are many ways of implementing and progressing and pace yourself. But if you don't have the why, along the way you face a lot of challenges, you will tend to derail. So my sharing is first of all, the top management must be the key participant, driver, sponsor, and then also the company must know why do you want to take this undertaking. Then the how will come about.
Perfect. So really convincing the top management and get them to really support and sponsor this transformation journey at the same time. Thank you. Cecilia.
I think a structure, to have a structure at the beginning, even though at the end it will change a lot. But I found it, if we like Siri, the readiness index, if in Singapore, if you haven't done so, then you probably go and look at Siri's readiness index and look at your priorities and start thinking about, okay, I believe we face problems every day. Right? You need to change your production line or your components or your supplier every day. Then just pick one problem. Then just use that one problem and make it a POC within yourself and utilize whatever we talked about. We digitize first the whole component production line. We try to make it, all the data digitized. And use that as a POC in a smaller scale POC. Then when you see it actually happening and you also solve the problems that you are facing right now, then I think you will have more buy-in then you can roll it out on a bigger scale.
Perfect. Thank you, Cecilia. It's really about prioritizing and of course selecting the right solutions or the right POC at the same time. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Shata.
Yeah, I think in the interest of time, I'll just summarize in one sentence. Connecting all the dots here, right? So transformation is not vendor driven. It has to be end user driven. I think that's the number one learning I have in my past 2 decades of experience. So I think that's the message which I'll pass on to this group.